If you have ever walked into work thinking it was just another Monday, only to walk out with your entire life turned upside down, then you will understand the story I am about to tell you. My name is Claire Thompson. I am 35 years old, and until the spring of 2022, I thought I had my life on a steady track. I was a project manager at Sterling Dynamics, a mid-sized tech supply company in Chicago. I had spent 7 years building my reputation there, staying late to finish reports, guiding teams through stressful product launches, and even earning an Employee of the Quarter award. I rented a small apartment on the north side of the city, loved grabbing deep dish pizza on Friday nights, and called my mom every Sunday like clockwork. Life was not perfect, but it was predictable, and I thought I was safe in the career I had poured my heart into. The day it all fell apart started like any other gray, chilly Monday in March. I grabbed my coffee from the corner cafe, scrolled through my phone, and rode the elevator up to the 8th floor of our glass office building. I remember thinking about the new project we were scheduled to start that week, a contract that had the potential to bring in over $100,000 for the company. I had already outlined the tasks for my team and was looking forward to presenting the plan to my boss, Michael Reynolds. But before I could even sit down at my desk, my phone pinged with a calendar alert. It was a meeting request from Michael and our HR director, Ethan Miller. The subject line was simple: discussion. I thought it might be about the upcoming project, or maybe about the recent budget reviews. I had no reason to believe it was anything more. The walk to Michael's office felt strangely heavy. His glass-walled corner room overlooked the city. But on that day, the sky was low and gray, and the streets below looked like a wet mirror. When I stepped inside, Ethan was already seated with a manila folder in front of him. Michael barely looked up from his laptop before gesturing for me to sit down. I remember the way the air felt cold, and even the faint hum of the ceiling light above seemed louder than usual. Before I could even ask what was going on, Ethan slid the folder across the desk toward me. Inside was a single sheet of paper with the words "termination notice" at the top. Michael finally spoke, his voice smooth and detached. "Claire, this is not easy, but we have to let you go. The team's performance has not met expectations, and leadership has decided to move in a different direction." For a moment, I thought he was joking. My team? The same team that had hit every deadline for the past year? The same team that had salvaged a late shipment project in February and earned praise from a client for it? I stared at the paper, feeling my ears burn and my chest tighten. "Team underperformance," I managed to say, my voice cracking. Ethan avoided eye contact, and Michael simply folded his hands as if this was a routine chore he had to get through before lunch. My mind went blank. I thought of the rent that was due in 2 weeks, the certification course I had been saving for, and the fact that my entire career was about to vanish with a single signature. I remember standing up slowly, the room spinning just enough to make me grip the back of the chair. I had always believed that hard work, loyalty, and results would protect me, that if I did the right things, the company would value me. In that moment, I realized how naive that belief was. Michael's expression was unreadable, maybe even satisfied, while Ethan mumbled something about collecting my belongings from my desk. They gave me 10 minutes to process before security would escort me out. 10 minutes to pack up 7 years of my life. 7 years of late nights, early mornings, and sacrificed weekends, all reduced to a box and a slip of paper. As I walked out of that office, clutching the folder, I felt a mix of anger, confusion, and a hollow ache in my chest. The hum of the fluorescent lights in the hallway felt deafening. I could feel my coworkers' eyes on me as I made my way back to my cubicle, though no one said a word. Whispers followed me, and I caught a glimpse of my friend Sophie Carter giving me a sympathetic look before quickly turning back to her computer. I packed my personal things into a small cardboard box, my glass award, a family photo, a lucky plant, and every step to the elevator felt like walking through mud. The moment the doors closed and I saw my own reflection in the mirror-like metal, the reality hit me. I was 35 years old, unemployed and humiliated, and the career I thought I had built a safe life around had just been taken away in a single morning. I carried that small cardboard box in my hands, feeling its weight, as if it held every failure I had ever experienced. Inside were the pieces of a career I thought would last forever. My family photo in a silver frame, the glass award I had once earned for Employee of the Quarter, a tiny succulent plant that had survived 3 office moves, and a couple of colorful pens that I had bought during a late-night Target run after working overtime. It was such a small collection for 7 years of my life. As I stepped out of Michael's office, the room behind me went quiet. I could feel the stares from my coworkers prickling my back. No one dared to speak, but I could see the whispers forming at their desks like little clouds of gossip. My friend Sophie Carter, who had joined the company 2 years after me, met my eyes briefly. She gave me a quick, sympathetic glance, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something, but she stopped herself and looked down at her keyboard. That small gesture cut deeper than I expected, because it told me she was scared too. The walk to the elevator felt endless. My heels clicked against the polished floor, echoing louder than usual. Every step felt like it carried the sound of my humiliation. I had been the person who trained half the people now staring at me from behind their monitors, and yet none of them moved. None of them even offered a nod of support. The world felt cold and clinical, like I had never truly belonged there. When I reached the elevator, I pressed the down button and waited. Those 30 seconds felt like an eternity. When the doors opened, I stepped inside alone and turned to face the hallway one last time. The metal walls reflected my face back at me, eyes red and glossy, lips pressed together to keep from trembling. The doors closed slowly, and I felt the world above me shrink away as I descended. The ride down to the lobby was only a few floors, but it felt like falling. My mind raced with panic and disbelief. How would I explain this to my family? How would I pay rent if I did not find a job quickly? I thought about the small safety net in my savings account and how fast it could disappear if I was not careful. My pride ached more than my fear. I had spent years working late, canceling plans, and staying loyal to a company that had just tossed me aside without hesitation. The elevator dinged, and when the doors opened, the bustling lobby of Sterling Dynamics suddenly felt like foreign territory. People passed by me, some in business suits and some in casual clothes, not knowing that I had just lost everything I had worked for. When I stepped out into the chilly Chicago air, the wind hit my face and made my eyes water, which almost disguised the tears I was trying to hold back. I walked to my car slowly, holding the box close to my chest like a fragile piece of myself. The parking lot felt empty and wide, and every footstep echoed in my mind. Sliding into the driver's seat, I set the box in the passenger side and just stared at it. My hands gripped the steering wheel, but I could not turn the key right away. I felt small, like a piece of paper someone had crumpled and tossed away. The words, "team underperformance," kept circling in my mind, and anger started to push through the sadness. My team had done everything right. We had delivered projects, fixed mistakes that were not ours, and even received client praise just a month ago. I realized then that this firing had nothing to do with my performance, and everything to do with office politics I had never fully understood. I drove home in silence that day, letting the city blur past the car windows. My phone buzzed once or twice, probably with messages from Sophie or Olivia, but I could not bring myself to answer. The weight of that cardboard box seemed to press against me from the passenger seat, reminding me of the life I had just lost. When I finally reached my apartment, I carried it upstairs and set it on the kitchen table. The room felt emptier than usual. I sat down and just stared at the box, my heart heavy. This was humiliation in its purest form, the kind that settles into your bones. It was the moment I realized that isolation does not always mean being alone in a room. Sometimes it is the feeling of being unseen and unwanted by the people you once gave everything to. The next week after I was fired felt like walking through a fog that never lifted. I woke up each morning in my small Chicago apartment with the same heavy weight pressing on my chest, realizing again and again that I no longer had a job to go to. My savings account had $14,200 in it, a number I kept checking as if staring at it would make it grow. I knew it would not last long if I did not find work quickly, and yet I felt paralyzed. I replayed Michael Reynolds' smirk in my mind, the way he folded his hands as if he had already moved on from my life. I began to wonder if maybe he was right, if maybe I really had failed, if maybe I was not as valuable as I had believed all those years. That thought cut deeper than the firing itself. My days became a blur of sitting on my couch, scrolling through job listings, and closing my laptop without sending a single application. Every posting I saw made me feel unqualified, even though I knew I had the skills. Doubt crept in like a slow-moving storm, covering every bit of confidence I had left. I barely left the apartment except to grab the mail or buy groceries, and every time I walked past another professional in a crisp coat or holding a laptop bag, I felt like a shadow of myself. The isolation was louder than any city noise. It was as if the world was moving forward while I was frozen in place. By the third day, my best friend Olivia Chen showed up uninvited, carrying a brown paper bag that smelled like fried rice and egg rolls. Olivia and I had been friends since college, and she had a way of walking into my life like sunlight through a dusty window. She placed the food on my coffee table, looked at me in my old hoodie and sweatpants, and shook her head with a half smile. "Claire, you are not weak," she said softly, handing me a pair of chopsticks. "They just do not see your worth yet." Her words made my eyes sting. I wanted to believe her, but the anger and sadness felt heavier than hope. I took a bite of the warm food and let the comfort sink in, but the hole inside me still felt wide and cold. That night, after she left, I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the sacrifices I had made for Sterling Dynamics. I remembered the nights I stayed in the office past 10, the weekends I checked emails from my phone, the vacations I postponed because a project needed my attention. All of it ended with a piece of paper labeling me as underperforming. I thought about my parents back in Michigan, about the pride in my dad's voice when he told people his daughter was a project manager in the city. I had not even told them I was fired yet, because I could not bear to hear the pause in their voices when I explained. Self-doubt filled every corner of my thoughts. Maybe I had imagined that I was good at my job. Maybe I had missed signs that I was never really valued. The spiral deepened the more I compared myself to the people I saw online. On social media, former coworkers were posting about new achievements, company events, and professional milestones. I stared at my own profile and wondered if anyone was whispering about me behind screens the way they had in the office hallways. I considered deleting everything and disappearing for a while, but I could not even decide what that would solve. I felt small, like the world had shrunk to the size of my apartment, and the only thing left was that number in my bank account slowly counting down. One evening, as I scrolled through my phone without purpose, Olivia called to check on me. Her voice was calm but firm. "Claire, I know you are hurting, but do not let them win twice. They already took your job. Do not let them take your confidence too." I sat in silence for a moment, staring at the reflection of the city lights in my window. Her words stayed with me long after we hung up. Somewhere deep down, a tiny spark flickered. It was not strength yet, not even close, but it was a reminder that I was still here. And maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to stand up again. 2 weeks after I was fired, I was still moving through life in slow motion. My days blurred into one another, filled with quiet hours in my apartment and nights staring at the ceiling, wondering what I could have done differently. The sting of losing my job had not faded, and the voice of self-doubt was still loud in my head. I kept thinking about Michael Reynolds, his calm and cold expression in that office, and the words "team underperformance" that had sent me out the door with a cardboard box. I had not yet found the strength to start applying for jobs seriously. My laptop sat on the coffee table, closed most of the time, because every time I thought about opening it, the shame of failure came rushing back. Then one Tuesday morning, My phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email with no subject line and a sender I did not recognize. For a moment I thought it might be spam, but something about it made me curious. I opened it, and my heart started to race as I read the short message. It said, "You deserve to know the truth. He set you up." Attached to the email was a single screenshot of an internal message thread from Sterling Dynamics. In it, Michael Reynolds was discussing the recent $120,000 contract delay with another manager. My eyes locked on the line that made my stomach twist. Michael had written, "Claire dropped the ball on the shipment approval, and now we are delayed. I will handle the termination to clean this up." My chest tightened as I stared at the message, reading it over and over. It was a lie. I had never approved that shipment. In fact, I remembered clearly that Michael had pushed it through himself during a late Friday meeting, saying he would take care of it personally because he wanted to speed things up. Now here it was in black and white, proof that he had blamed me for his own mistake. He had thrown me under the bus to save his own position, and the company believed him without even asking for my side. I felt a wave of anger rise in me so strong that my hands trembled as I held the phone. I sat there for a long moment, frozen in disbelief before the emotions started to tumble over each other. Anger, betrayal, relief in a strange way, because at least now I knew the truth. I had not failed. I had been lied about, and my career had been crushed because of Michael's dishonesty. My mind went back to the day I was fired, remembering the way Ethan Miller avoided eye contact in that office. Did he know? Did anyone else know, or were they all just following orders from a man trying to protect himself? I realized then how fragile corporate loyalty really was, how quickly years of work could be erased by one lie from someone higher up. I forwarded the email to myself and then saved the screenshot in 3 different folders, as if protecting it gave me a piece of my dignity back. My first instinct was to call Olivia and tell her everything, but I sat on my couch for an hour just letting the reality sink in. The humiliation I had carried for weeks started to turn into a sharper kind of emotion, a cold anger that burned in my chest. For 2 weeks, I had let myself believe that I was the problem, that I was unworthy. Now I knew that I had been a pawn in Michael's game to protect his career. That evening, Olivia came over with coffee, and I finally told her what had happened. I handed her my phone and let her read the email and the screenshot. Her eyes widened, and she let out a slow breath. "Claire," she said, her voice steady, "you need to hold on to this. This is your proof. He is the liar, not you." Hearing those words made my shoulders feel lighter for the first time in weeks. I was still unemployed, still unsure of my next step, but something inside me shifted that night. The truth had found its way to me, and with it came the first spark of the fire I would need to fight back. The night I learned the truth about Michael Reynolds, I felt a new kind of energy take hold of me. For 2 weeks, I had been drowning in self-doubt and humiliation, replaying my firing in my head and wondering if I was the problem. But that single screenshot had changed everything. I was not weak. I was not a failure. I had been betrayed. Sitting alone at my kitchen table, staring at the glow of my laptop, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would not let him erase 7 years of work with a single lie. Even if I never stepped foot inside Sterling Dynamics again, I would reclaim my dignity and clear my professional name. The first thing I did was start documenting everything I could remember. I dug through old emails, project files, and calendar events, building a timeline of the weeks leading up to the $120,000 contract delay. I found the email chain where Michael insisted on handling the shipment approval himself, along with the time-stamped report that showed I had completed my part correctly. I saved every file to multiple drives, labeling each folder with the date and a clear description. My apartment became a small war room with papers and sticky notes spread across the kitchen table. For the first time since I was fired, I felt a sense of purpose. This was not just about anger anymore. It was about reclaiming my voice after being silenced. I also began keeping a written journal of everything I could recall from my final months at the company. I wrote down the late-night emails, the last-minute meetings, the time Michael congratulated me on handling a client issue that now, in hindsight, I realized he had later pinned on me. Writing it all out was like peeling back layers of fog that had settled over my memory. It reminded me that I had worked hard, that I had value, and that I did not deserve what happened. As I pieced the timeline together, a picture emerged of a man desperate to protect himself, willing to destroy someone else's career to do it. By the end of that week, I had a file full of evidence that told the real story. I did not know exactly what I would do with it yet, but just having it gave me a strange kind of strength. I could feel my confidence slowly rebuilding itself with every document I saved. I thought about Michael and how he probably went home every night thinking he had gotten away with it, that I would just disappear quietly. The idea of proving him wrong became a quiet flame in my chest that kept me moving forward. I started to see my unemployment not as the end of my story, but as the beginning of a different kind of fight. I called Olivia one evening to tell her what I had been doing. She listened patiently as I explained the folders of emails, the printed reports, and the journal I was keeping. When I paused, expecting her to tell me I was overreacting, she surprised me. "Claire, this is exactly what you need to do," she said firmly. "You are taking your power back. Even if you never step back into that building, you are making sure the truth will come out if it needs to." Her words hit me with the same warmth as the first sip of coffee on a cold morning. For the first time in weeks, I did not feel like a victim. I felt like someone who still had choices. That night, I printed the screenshot that had started it all and pinned it to my fridge as a reminder of why I could not give up. Every time I walked into my kitchen, I saw Michael's words blaming me for something he had done, and instead of feeling crushed, I felt fueled. I knew the road ahead would not be simple, and I still had no idea how I would rebuild my career. But I had made a decision. I would fight back in the only way I could, with the truth, with patience, and with the determination to rise above the person who tried to bury me. By the time April turned to May, I knew I could not live in the shadow of anger forever. The evidence I had collected against Michael Reynolds was my armor, but armor alone would not rebuild my life. I needed to become stronger, more skilled, and more prepared for the next opportunity that came my way. After staring at my bank account for an entire evening, I made a decision that felt both scary and liberating. I invested $3,000 from my savings into an online business analytics certification course. It was not cheap, and the thought of my dwindling savings made my stomach twist, but I knew I needed to bet on myself. If Sterling Dynamics could take away my title, they could not take away my knowledge or my determination to grow. The course became my lifeline. Every morning, I brewed a cup of coffee and turned my kitchen table into a classroom. I watched videos, completed case studies, and practiced analyzing data sets until my eyes were tired. At first, the lessons felt overwhelming. I had not been in a structured learning environment for years, and part of me doubted whether I could keep up. But as the days passed, I found myself enjoying the challenge. Each completed module felt like a small victory, a brick in the foundation of a new version of myself. My confidence, which had been crushed under humiliation weeks earlier, began to rise again in quiet, steady steps. Around the second week of May 2022, something happened that felt like the universe was finally giving me a sign. I received a message on LinkedIn from Jason Kim, my former mentor at Sterling Dynamics. Jason had always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. He had left the company a year before and joined a competitor in the logistics and supply chain industry. His message was short but powerful. "Claire, I heard what happened. If you are open to it, I have a consulting project that could use your skills. It is short-term, but it might help you get back on your feet." My heart raced as I read his words. For weeks, I had been stuck in my apartment feeling invisible, and now Someone was reaching out with a hand to pull me back into the professional world. We spoke later that evening on a video call. Jason's voice carried the same steady kindness I remembered from our old office days. He explained that his company had a client struggling with supply chain data and reporting. It was a mess of spreadsheets and missed deadlines, and they needed someone who could organize everything, find the bottlenecks, and propose solutions. It was a 6-week consulting project with a modest pay of $5,000. But the real value was the chance to prove myself again. I did not hesitate. "Yes, Jason, I want to do it," I said, my voice firmer than it had been in months. The next morning, I prepared my small home office with a renewed sense of purpose. I reviewed the course material I had been studying and realized how perfectly it aligned with the work Jason needed. The first week on the project was intense. I spent long hours digging into the client's messy data, cleaning spreadsheets, and creating simple dashboards to show them exactly where the problems were. It felt like stretching muscles I had not used in a long time, and with every step, I felt my confidence returning. Olivia stopped by one evening with dinner and noticed the spark in my voice. "Look at you," she said with a proud smile. "I have not seen this fire in weeks. You are back." By the end of the second week, I had already identified 3 critical issues in the client's supply chain process. When I presented my findings in a virtual meeting, the client's team was stunned by the clarity of the report. Jason sent me a private message afterward that simply said, "This is why I knew you were the right person." Those words washed over me like sunlight breaking through clouds. For the first time since losing my job, I felt seen, capable, and valuable again. It was not a full-time job yet, and it was not the ultimate victory, but it was a lucky break that reminded me that no single betrayal could erase my skills or my future. By July 2022, I was no longer the woman who had walked out of Sterling Dynamics with a cardboard box and a crushed heart. The consulting project with Jason Kim's company had given me the push I needed, and now I had the chance to lead something bigger, something that could remind the world, and myself, of what I was capable of. Jason called me one morning with excitement in his voice. "Claire, we landed a major client, and I want you to lead the project. It is a $250,000 supply chain overhaul, 6 weeks to turn things around. I trust you." Hearing those words made my pulse race. For a moment, the old fear crept in, whispering that I was not ready. But I pushed it aside and said yes. This was my chance to make a true comeback. I threw myself into the project with every bit of focus and energy I had. The client's supply chain was a tangle of late shipments, inaccurate data, and miscommunication between warehouses and vendors. It was chaos, but chaos was something I had learned to navigate. I built a clear action plan with timelines, tasks, and responsibilities, and I worked side by side with their team to execute it. My days were long, often starting with coffee at 7 in the morning and ending with emails at midnight. But this time the work felt different. I was not doing it for a company that did not value me. I was doing it for myself, to rebuild what had been taken from me, and for the people who believed in me, like Jason and Olivia. The first big win came in the 3rd week. We managed to identify a bottleneck in the client's distribution center that had been causing almost half of their delays. It was a simple fix, but no one had taken the time to analyze the data clearly before. I presented the solution in a meeting with their executives, showing them how one change could save them weeks of lost time and tens of thousands of dollars. Their jaws dropped, and I felt a surge of pride that I had not felt in months. I walked out of that virtual meeting with my shoulders back, remembering the feeling of being good at what I did. It was like finding a piece of myself that I thought had been lost in that elevator ride months ago. By the end of the 6 weeks, the project was a complete success. The client's supply chain was running smoothly, their costs were down, and their satisfaction was higher than it had been in years. Jason called me on a Friday afternoon to deliver the news. "Claire, they are thrilled. You knocked it out of the park. I knew you would." I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes for a moment, and let the feeling of victory wash over me. I was not just surviving anymore. I was winning. Then came the twist I never saw coming. A few days later, Jason forwarded me an email he had received from a man I knew all too well, Henry Alvarez, the CEO of Sterling Dynamics, the very company that had fired me in humiliation just months before. Henry had been on a joint industry call where the client raved about the consulting team that had saved their supply chain. He had asked who was leading the project, and when he learned my name, he sent Jason a note that simply said, "Claire Thompson, impressive work. We should talk." Seeing that email felt surreal. The company that had discarded me like I was nothing was now hearing my name in rooms where results mattered. That night, I sat on my balcony with Olivia, watching the city lights shimmer against the dark sky. I told her about the email, and she laughed with a kind of joy that only a true friend can share. "Look at that," she said. "They fired you, and now your work is echoing all the way back to their top office. That is what I call poetic justice." I smiled, sipping my tea, feeling both calm and powerful. The project had not just rebuilt my career, it had rebuilt me. And for the first time in months, I felt like the world was opening its doors again, waiting for me to step through on my own terms. By August 2022, the ripple effects of Michael Reynolds' actions began to surface in a way that felt almost poetic. Sterling Dynamics, the company that had tossed me out without a second thought, lost 2 of its biggest clients in the span of a month. Both were companies I had worked with closely, and both had experienced late shipments and miscommunication since I left. Word in the industry spread quickly that something was wrong with Sterling's operations. Though I was no longer there, I knew exactly who was responsible. Michael's pattern of cutting corners and avoiding accountability was catching up to him. Around that same time, I made a decision that would change everything for me professionally. I wrote an article on LinkedIn titled, "5 Lessons from Losing a Job I Thought I Would Have Forever." I did not name Michael or Sterling Dynamics directly, but I told my story with honesty. I described how I had been blamed for a shipment delay I did not cause, how it forced me to confront my own fears, and how I rebuilt my skills and confidence through learning and consulting work. I focused on resilience, integrity, and the importance of documenting your work. My intention was not revenge. I simply wanted to reclaim my voice in the professional world and share a story that might inspire others who felt blindsided by corporate betrayal. The article went viral in the supply chain and business operations community. Colleagues from old projects reached out to comment and share their support. Strangers messaged me, saying my words gave them hope after their own career setbacks. It felt like stepping into the light after months of hiding in shadows. Olivia read the comments with me one evening and said, "Claire, this is not just a comeback. This is your story turning into something bigger than what they did to you." Her words warmed me, but the true surprise came in the following weeks. Industry professionals began connecting the dots on their own. Even though I had not named anyone, people familiar with Sterling Dynamics knew which project I had been on, and they knew who had been in charge. Quietly, whispers started to circulate that the manager who had pushed me out was the same one overseeing the failing contracts. I watched as Michael's once polished reputation began to falter. He had built his image on being a reliable leader, but now clients were talking, and industry contacts were starting to see a different story. Meanwhile, my professional reputation soared. I received 3 new consulting inquiries within 2 weeks of publishing the article, and 2 of them came from companies that had recently cut ties with Sterling. I still remember the moment I saw my own article shared by a major industry newsletter with the caption, "A powerful story of resilience in supply chain management." My hand shook a little as I stared at the screen. This was the same industry that had watched me walk out of Sterling in humiliation just months ago. Now it was celebrating my work, my perspective, and my strength. I had turned the very narrative that once shamed me into a platform for growth. By the end of August, Jason called me with a tone of satisfaction in his voice. "Claire, I think you have done something Michael never expected. You have turned the truth into momentum. And now people see who you really are. I could hear the pride in his words, and it felt like validation for every late night I had spent studying, every tear I had cried in my apartment, and every ounce of energy I had poured into rebuilding my name. I no longer needed Michael or Sterling Dynamics to acknowledge their mistake. The industry had already spoken for me. One evening, I walked down to the lakefront, watching the sun sink over Chicago's skyline. I thought about that gray March morning when I'd been escorted out of the building with a box in my hands, feeling like my life was over. Now, just 5 months later, my career was not only alive, but thriving. The truth had a way of finding its way to the surface, and I realized that sometimes the best revenge is not a confrontation or a lawsuit. It is standing tall, while the people who try to break you reveal themselves through their own actions. By September 2022, life had taken a turn I never could have imagined 6 months earlier. The woman who had left Sterling Dynamics in tears, carrying a box of belongings and a heart full of shame, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and ready to step into a new chapter. That month, I received an official job offer from a top logistics firm in Chicago. The position was Senior Supply Chain Analyst, and the salary was $110,000 per year, nearly double what I had earned at Sterling. When I opened the email and read the offer, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, letting the moment sink in. My hands trembled, but this time they trembled with joy. I thought about all the steps that had led me here, the painful firing, the nights of self-doubt, the hours spent learning, and the consulting project that reignited my confidence. Accepting that offer felt like closing the door on a chapter of my life that had once felt like the end of the world. It was more than a job. It was proof that I had been right to believe in myself, even when others tried to bury me. I called Olivia first, and when I told her the news, she screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Claire, this is it. This is your moment," she said, laughing through happy tears. Around the same time, the final piece of my silent victory fell into place. Jason called me one evening with a tone that sounded both satisfied and slightly amused. "Did you hear the news about Michael Reynolds?" he asked. My heart skipped a beat. Jason went on to explain that Michael had been quietly removed from his vice president position at Sterling Dynamics. The board had finally uncovered the mishandled $120,000 contract and linked the chain of errors directly to him. His pattern of mismanagement, combined with the loss of 2 major clients, had sealed his fate. There was no press release, no dramatic scene, just a quiet erasure of the man who had once believed he held all the power over my career. When I heard the news, I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. But it was not the explosive thrill I might have imagined months ago. It was quieter, deeper, like a sense of balance had finally returned. I did not need to gloat. I did not need to call him or confront him. Life had already done that for me. His downfall and my rise spoke louder than any argument I could make. The sweetest victories are the silent ones, the ones where your success is the only answer you give to the people who doubted you. In the weeks that followed, I started my new role with a heart full of gratitude and determination. Walking into my new office on the first day felt surreal. The space was bright and welcoming, filled with people who smiled when they introduced themselves. I felt none of the cold judgment I had once felt in the halls of Sterling Dynamics. I worked hard, but now I worked with a sense of freedom and purpose. I knew I had earned this place not through luck, but through resilience, learning, and refusing to let betrayal define me. One evening in late September, I sat on my balcony watching the city glow under the fading sunset. I thought back to the woman in March who had cried in her car, feeling like the world had ended. I wished I could reach back through time and tell her, "Hold on, they cannot take what is truly yours. The truth will always rise, and so will you." I breathed in the cool evening air, feeling a peace I had not known in months. My silent victory was complete. I had not only rebuilt my career, but I had also reclaimed my story, my dignity, and my life. Looking back now, I can say with complete honesty that losing my job was the push I never knew I needed. At the time, it felt like the world had ended. I had walked out of Sterling Dynamics with my life packed into a small cardboard box, feeling humiliated and broken. But life has a way of teaching us lessons in the moments we least want them. I learned that your worth does not depend on people who cannot see it. My value had never disappeared. It had only been ignored by the wrong people. It took losing everything I thought I had built to finally see myself clearly. I remember the day I logged into LinkedIn to update my profile after starting my new position. My hands hovered over the keyboard for a moment before I typed the words that felt like both a confession and a celebration. Fired in March, thriving in September. Seeing that sentence on the screen made me smile in a way I had not in months. It was short, but it carried my entire journey within it. The pain of betrayal, the nights of doubt, the hours of hard work, and the triumph of reclaiming my career and my dignity. I did not post it to boast. I posted it as a statement of truth and a reminder that even the darkest chapters can lead to brighter pages if you keep turning them. When I think about the months in between, I see them now as the building blocks of a new life. In the quiet of my apartment, when it felt like the world had forgotten me, I discovered what resilience really means. Resilience is not about pretending you are not hurt. It is about feeling the pain fully and still choosing to get up the next day and try again. I had faced the spiral of self-doubt, the long hours of studying and rebuilding, the weight of wondering if I would ever be seen as capable again, and slowly, step by step, I rebuilt the woman I wanted to be. There were moments that felt like small miracles. Olivia showing up with takeout and encouragement when I could not face the world. Jason reaching out with a project that reminded me of my own strength, the first time a client thanked me for saving them time and money. The day my LinkedIn article went viral and strangers wrote to say my story gave them hope. Each moment was a thread that wove together the new version of me. Someone stronger, bolder, and unafraid to face change. The victory over Michael Reynolds and Sterling Dynamics was never about revenge in the loud, dramatic way movies might show it. It was a quiet, personal victory. Seeing my career flourish while the truth about his mismanagement surfaced on its own was enough. Life had a way of balancing the scales without me needing to lift a finger. The satisfaction came not from watching someone else fall, but from knowing that I had risen. I had proven to myself that no one could take away my skills, my integrity, or my future. Now, when I walk into my new office, I do it with a sense of calm confidence. I greet my coworkers with a smile. I take on challenges without the fear of being unfairly blamed, and I carry myself differently. I no longer feel like I need to prove my worth to everyone I meet. I know my value. I also carry a piece of advice in my heart for anyone who might be where I once was. If life pushes you out of a place you thought was permanent, it might be clearing the path for something better. Your job title, your boss, or your company does not define who you are. The way you rise after being knocked down does. Sometimes I sit on my balcony, watching the Chicago skyline glow against the night, and I think about that gray Monday in March, when everything seemed to fall apart. I wish I could reach back and whisper to that version of me, "Hold on. This is the beginning, not the end." My journey from humiliation to victory was not easy, but it was worth every step. I walked through pain, found my strength, and came out the other side thriving. Not because they gave me a second chance, but because I gave myself one.